and AM 1160 on your Friday morning. We're glad that you're with us here today, and I need to pop one thing onto the computer here, and we're in the process of doing that before we talk to Dr. Ralph May with us here this morning. We have a very serious topic to speak with him about. While we're waiting for Mr. Computer to catch up with us, let me tell you about this event coming next Thursday, March 24th, 7 to 10 a.m., S&T Wellness Center. It is a community cholesterol screening put on by IRMC. If you don't know your numbers, well, you really need to know your numbers, okay? This is going to be a cost of only $10. It's not covered by insurance. It's a community cholesterol screening. You have to fast ahead of it, but you need an appointment, okay? 724-357-8088. You're not going to get this done for less than $10 anywhere else. So do call and schedule 357-8088 for your cholesterol screening. 7 to 10 a.m. next Thursday at the S&T Wellness Center. That's on Shelley Drive. All right, so it is the voice of Indiana County, WCCS 101.1 FM and AM 1160. I asked Dr. Ralph May to come and visit with us today to talk about a very, very serious topic, and that is teen suicide. We have had several in our region here lately, including a student at one school to our east, a student, in fact, at one school to our west, as a matter of fact, a former student there. But Dr. May, in both cases, these were people that those surrounding them weren't aware that they were in trouble.
No, and I think that's the point, Todd, is that sometimes suicide catches people completely off guard because you have on the surface what appears to be somebody who has it all, a kid who's got a good trajectory, doing well, and seems to be successful, seems to be very happy, and they die by suicide because oftentimes, particularly adolescents, do not like to communicate their true intention. They like to keep things, they're in shame, they're embarrassed. And so even though they're struggling mightily and feeling very hopeless, they don't communicate to their family, they don't communicate to their friends, or they do so in such a way that nobody would know what they were thinking. And so when they die by suicide, it becomes an incredible trauma for the family and for the community. And I want to point out that at any given point in time, we know that about 10 to 15% of kids and adolescents are struggling with suicidal thinking. I mean, that's an incredible number when you think about it. And that was pre-pandemic. The data from the pandemic is just now coming out, and we know that's going to be worse. But pre-pandemic, 10 to 15% of kids at any given time are struggling with suicidal thinking and hopelessness. And so when someone who they admire or respect or one of their friends dies by suicide, it creates a shockwave. And that shockwave can tip them into, if they can't make it, why can't I make it? And that creates considerable risk for that population of kids in particular.
We have heard that, and in fact, there seemed to have been a rash of suicides 4 or 5 years ago here in Indiana County, and it was so scary for parents and for school administrators, for fellow students to understand that somebody in my own circle could actually be contemplating doing something horrible to themselves, and the feeling of helplessness you get out of that because something happened and nobody saw it, and everybody feels guilty about it.
That's the universal reaction. As part of the Suicide Task Force, I'm chair of what we call Postvention Committee. We send a team to families and to communities and to schools after there's been a suicide loss. And universally, the reaction is, why didn't somebody see something? Why didn't somebody notice? Did we miss something? Did we miss something? Guilt, survivor's guilt, self-blame, blaming. It becomes a reaction of trying to understand something that's unthinkable. It's a normal human reaction to blame ourselves, to think we missed something. But we know, though, the statistics show and the data shows, Todd, that about 40% of kids who die by suicide don't communicate it. They keep it to themselves because they're ashamed or embarrassed. And so they don't communicate it. Or when they do communicate it, it's something so vague that it would have been normal conversation for a lot of kids. And social media has also kind of amplified this a little bit, that, communication on social media can be so quick and so brief and so that people don't really know. You're not looking somebody in the eye. You're not seeing exactly how they're feeling, or if they're inconsistent between what they're saying and how they look. So it creates another problem with understanding the risk that somebody's at.
Yeah. The signs can be very subtle, and we're not trained as the general folks out in the world. We're not trained to see the signs that you are able to see and to discern. What are some of the things we should be looking for, though?
Well, I think one of the things that people say when they're struggling is, first of all, they're feeling hopeless and trapped. Nobody really wants to die by suicide. They just feel like there's no other alternative. They feel trapped. They feel hopeless. They feel like there's no other way out. They're embarrassed. They're ashamed. So sometimes they say things like, I just don't think I can take anymore. I just don't think I can go on anymore. I'm no good. I don't see a way out of this. They say things like that. Now, people would think, well, they're struggling. They're having a hard time. But that can be a communication of, I can't do it anymore. I'm going to do something. I'm going to get escape from this. I'm going to run away from this pain and this suffering because I have no way out. And and I call it suicide brain. I've been there myself, where you think that it's a logical thing to do. You think that it will be better for everyone if you're dead. Suicide changes your thinking. It changes the way you think about yourself and your value. So you think that everybody else will be better off without me. You have no idea of the damage that you'll do, and your thoughts are twisted in that direction. And so we have to teach people to notice the subtle communication signs. Suicide prevention, by the way, the most important component of suicide prevention is communication. Listening to people, asking questions. We train the community, for instance, in QPR, question, persuade, refer, like CPR. You train enough civilians, you save lives. QPR is training civilians in how to recognize suicidal communication and ask questions. Don't be afraid to say, hey, are you having some thoughts of wanting to kill yourself? Don't be afraid to ask directly. We surveyed adolescents once, and about 30% said, if somebody asked me directly that I was thinking of killing myself, I'd probably say, yeah, I'm thinking about it. It's just that nobody notices how I'm suffering. Of course, they're not communicating it very well, but they're feeling like nobody notices how much I'm suffering. So if somebody does pay attention and ask, that provides a very important opportunity to understand what's going on in the person.
When it is a teenager involved, and their emotions are not developed to the point that adults are, is it magnified? And what do we say to their schoolmates, those around them who are with them more time than anybody else, about recognizing signs and helping them?
First of all, when I teach kids, I say, you are a first responder. What does that mean? In all likelihood, you'll be the first one to notice or hear or find out that your friend is struggling. The teachers might, the parents might, but usually you're the first to know. What you need to do is take it seriously. Follow up. Ask, you don't seem to be doing well, my friend. What's wrong? What's bothering you? Let's talk about this. Show very much interest and openness to communicate with them about what they're really feeling. That's the first order of business. And to recognize that when they're communicating the sadness, if they start changing, if they start appearing more depressed, not engaging in activities that they enjoyed doing, if they start pulling away from connections, if they start using substances more, that's another thing that sometimes adolescents do, is they use substances to cover over depression and anxiety. And the rate of depression in adolescence is estimated to be 40% in some populations, Todd. So we're talking about almost half the kids at some point experience depression. We know that, by the way, depression is highly associated with suicide. And so untreated depression is a key indicator. So if you see a change in behavior, one of the things that we also put a big warning sign out is somebody's been depressed and has been withdrawn, and all of a sudden they seem happy. All of a sudden they seem better. That's a warning sign, because sometimes what happens is they've made a decision to die. So the pressure is released, right? I'm not going to have to deal with things anymore. So suddenly there's a lift in the mood that's dramatic, or they give away things that their possessions to friends or something. That's another critical warning sign. Suicidal ideation, thinking you want to kill yourself and then planning to kill yourself, is an emergency, because you will likely act on that. We know that, by the way, in Indiana County, the last survey in 2019 showed that at any given point in time, 10.9% of kids were planning suicide, had a plan. Now, fortunately, most of those kids don't act, but 10% have a plan in their back pocket. That's an incredible number. That's the vulnerable population that I'm talking about, that we have to pay attention to, right?
Talking to Dr. Ralph May today. Our conversation brought to you by Marcus and Mack, a law firm representing injured people. Those who are surrounding somebody who is at risk of suicide, especially if they're young, might say to themselves, I see something going on there. I don't want to call his parents because maybe he'll turn on me. Right. I don't want to tell my school counselors or my trusted school mentors because that might risk our friendship.
Right.
not the approach to take.
No, I mean, you want to talk about a risk to friendship. Death is a particularly difficult risk for friendship. I mean, I've heard that before. I've talked to kids who are like, I don't want to make them mad at me.
Mm-hmm.
I don't want to upset them. Well, the decision, if they grabbed their chest and fell to the floor in pain, would you call 911? Would you call for help for them? Sure you would. You wouldn't I don't want to upset them. I don't want to get them in trouble. That's in adolescence, they worry about connection, right? It's about connection with one, not upsetting each other, being part of the group. That stands against being able to save somebody's health and life. I say, if they're alive to be mad at you, you've been successful.
Yeah. Yeah. Talking with Dr. Ralph May this morning, a very serious topic, teen suicide. Of course, any suicide is a very serious topic, and we certainly recognize that the people, when they leave their high school years and they move on to college, there's an isolation that takes place there. Those folks are at risk as well. Young people who are caught in substance abuse, they might find that they don't believe that they have any hope. All of them are eligible to be helped.
Eligible to be helped, and help is underutilized, Todd. Only about 30% of people who need the help, adolescents and adults for that matter, get it. Some of that's because help is hard to get because there's too much need and not enough help, but you can still get the help you need. It's still right out there. It's still right available, particularly in Indiana County.
Yeah.
You know, we have that 24/7 crisis number that we have, which is 1-877-333-2470. It answers, a therapist answers 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year. You can call. You don't have to identify yourself. You can stay confidential. You can call for a friend. You can call for yourself. But there's always somebody to talk to that can help you sort out what you need to do.
You can always turn it around.
Always.
Dr. Ralph May, thank you so much for visiting with us today.
No problem, Todd. Thanks for having me.
It is the voice of Indiana County, WCCS 101.1 FM and AM 1160.